Join now on the Buffalo Wild Wings guest line, Ryan Aber, beat writer for the Oklahoma baseball team for NewsOK.com and the Oklahoman. And I understand it, Ryan, that you are a huge Creed fan. I actually hear that you like Creed even more so than Pearl Jam. Is that accurate?
That is absolutely 100% false. Pearl Jam by a mile.
So we were just having a discussion here. Creed, I don't mean so now. When Creed was popular, were you like them, love them, hate them?
Hate them. I like Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam, and Scott Stapp just always came off to me like a pretender to that level, and was never a big Creed fan, and certainly even more so anti now.
Fair enough. I will say this. If we're talking Pearl Jam, those are two different stratospheres.
Absolutely.
I love me some Pearl Jam.
I do too.
All right, Ryan, obviously big news coming up over the weekend. We were on air last Friday, and Sonny Galloway was visiting Auburn. Soon later, he was signing a contract. Before we get into all that, as we look back at Sonny Galloway at Oklahoma over the course of his career, how's it going to be viewed? How's that chapter in Oklahoma baseball history, the Sonny Galloway era, how's that going to be looked at?
I think it'll be looked at kinder the farther we get away from it. I mean, you look at the raw numbers now, and there's no doubt they were impressive. I mean, 5 consecutive 40-win seasons, had a 50-win season in there, made the College World Series, made Super Regionals the last 2 years. I mean, by any standard, those are successful numbers, unless we're talking for a program like LSU or, the very top echelon of college baseball. And I think that only gets looked upon better the farther we get away from Sonny Galloway being the head coach at Oklahoma.
Were you surprised the way some of the players come out? Dylan Overton rips Sonny Galloway on Twitter. Were you surprised that some players reacted that way?
Certainly about how strongly they came out. I know there's always been some feelings that maybe players didn't love playing for him all the time. But you hear that at most successful programs. But certainly to see a player like Dylan Overton, who'd been so successful, come out that strongly that soon after the coaching change, and to be backed up by a couple of other guys, was certainly surprising. And then you saw the opposite reaction with a couple of guys as well, with players like Max White coming out on Twitter in defense of Sonny Galloway and a couple others.
Ryan, that seems to be kind of the pulse I get from not just his players, but also the fan base. You've got some people that liked him, thought he did a great job, appreciated, as you said, as you look at the raw numbers and what he did, and you've got a lot of others that didn't like him and are happy to see him go. It just seems like he's almost he's a lightning plug type of guy. You've got a lot of people on both sides of the argument.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a guy that you either love him or hate him, and there's not a whole lot of people who feel in the middle about him, which is why you see this divide that's developed between on the team, former players, guys who've been around, and then obviously in the fan base there's a big divide over whether it's a good thing that Sonny Galloway left or if it's a bad thing and that they're going to have problems getting back to that same level with whoever they hire next.
You think he's going to have a lot of success in Auburn? You think his coaching style and everything, you think that's going to work there?
I think it's going to be tough in the SEC with the level of play at the very top of that conference. You look at Florida, LSU, Alabama's had some success. There's just it's amazing how deep that conference is. Vanderbilt is one of the best programs in the country. Arkansas has been phenomenal. But certainly you see why he left, because of the money difference that he's going to get down there, and also the fan support difference is a big difference, even in a place like Auburn that's on the bottom half of the SEC, than here at OU where he was in the top half of the Big 12.
We're joined by Ryan Aber, NewsOK.com, and the Oklahoma beat writer for the Oklahoma baseball team. I've heard a lot of people call in Toby Rowland's show, just people even talk to us about the facilities at Oklahoma. It was a topic last week and a couple of weeks, and definitely is coming up right now. Rate for me the facilities at Oklahoma, because, I don't know. I haven't been to I can't act like I've been to a lot of Big 12 baseball parks and I've seen all the different facilities, but for me, L. Del Mitchell, it seems like a nice park. Is it the greatest thing in the world? Probably not, but definitely seems like a nice ballpark.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about Big 12 level, it's certainly one of the nicer ones in this conference. Texas obviously has a phenomenal facility down there. I think the difference is when you look at around the country, and especially in the SEC. I covered Arkansas baseball for a while, and they've got a stadium that sells out every weekend for SEC conference games. They've got luxury suites from down the right field line all the way behind the plate down the left field line, and it's just amazing the difference in indoor hitting facility, all that stuff that comes along with big-time baseball. I think it's one of those things where, you look at the OU facilities, they stack up pretty well nationally if you look at everybody. But when you look at the power conferences, there's certainly some things that need to be done. Now the question is whether OU was ever going to do those things while Sonny Galloway was still the coach, and does Sonny leaving kick them a little bit to get those things kick-started and improve the facilities down there.
I guess my question is this, Coach Galloway going to Auburn, wanting to play in the SEC where there's a big fan base, people come out to the games. He comes to Oklahoma, they have success, his track record is there, the success is there, and the people still don't show up. Why is that? Are people ever going to show up to Oklahoma baseball games?
I think it's a little bit difficult because, the proximity from Norman to Oklahoma City and everything athletically that brings, especially it's hard to ignore the Thunder and what they've done and think that doesn't have any kind of impact on people coming out to watch OU baseball, because it absolutely does, especially early in the season until you get to about the Big 12 tournament. So it's going to be more difficult for Oklahoma to draw big crowds out to college baseball than it is in a place like Auburn, where you've got Atlanta a few hours away. Columbus, Georgia is about the closest decent-sized city to there. So a lot of people are looking to Auburn for their entertainment dollar, and you're going to get people out just because of that.
Well, Ryan, we're closing the book on the Sonny Galloway chapter. Now, tall duty for Joe Castiglione to hire a new coach. In your opinion, who makes the most sense? Who do you envision being the next head coach at Oklahoma?
Well, I think we've heard all kinds of talk about Dan Hefner down at Dallas Baptist. He's done a phenomenal job. I think, though, you've got to wait until the College World Series is over. I would talk to a guy like Tracy Smith at Indiana. I mean, taking a program like Indiana to the College World Series, not only had Indiana not been, the Big Ten hadn't been since 1984, and you've got to think that he would give Oklahoma a good, hard look, given some of the inherent advantages to being this far south compared to Indiana. Another guy that's name has come up a little bit is George Horton from Oregon. Building that program from scratch and what he's done. He's a Cal State Fullerton guy. Cal State Fullerton's history of their track record of success and how they built it has been compared a lot to what OU has done. So he's a guy that maybe there wouldn't be as much transition on. But there's definitely a lot of really good candidates out there, and I think they'll talk to some. Randy Mazey from West Virginia. I mean, you've got to look at Kansas State and what he's done up there, Rich Hill, as a candidate as well.
What's this going to do for recruiting in the immediate future for Oklahoma? Is this going to affect it positively or negatively? What way do you see it going?
Well, it'll depend on who they hire, because the recruiting for the most part for next year is wrapped up. They just before Sonny left, they wrapped up Austin O'Brien, a kid from Owasso who was the Gatorade State Player of the Year, was on my All-State team. He was a phenomenal player. They put together a really good recruiting class, and that should stick together. But who they hire will make the difference on who they get there in the future.
And ultimately, Ryan, I just, because I don't have a good feel for it, but at the end of the day, how good of a job is the University of Oklahoma head coaching job for baseball? I mean, are we talking a top 10, top 15 job? I mean, these guys you mentioned, these are all head coaches at places. Dan Hefner at Dallas Baptist just built a new facility there for him, kind of got it rocking and rolling. You mentioned the Indiana coach taking a team to a College World Series. I mean, how attractive is this Oklahoma job?
I think you look at it, I put it anywhere from 7 or 8 to 20. I think it's not the absolute upper echelon of college baseball, but it's certainly not that far removed from it. I mean, you look at the success that they've had over the entirety of Sonny's era. That time he was there, they were able to do it consistently, not get to the College World Series, but at least threaten for it. So certainly OU is one of the top jobs in the country, and it's going to attract really good candidates.
Great stuff, Ryan. We appreciate the time today. Great breakdown of Sonny Galloway and prospective coaches for right here at Oklahoma. It's Ryan Aber of NewsOK.com and the Oklahoman beat writer for the Oklahoma baseball team. Thanks, Ryan. Great stuff, man.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thanks for having me, guys.